Good morning. Welcome to Writer's Chat Tuesday, where craft connect community. I am one of your co-hosts, Brandy Bro, and I'm here with Melissa Stroh and Norma Poor, also my co-hosts. We have a special guest today who's going to talk to us about contests. But first, before I pass off to the introduction, let me just say if you want to be here live, you can do that. You can join us at Writers Chat Members on Facebook. And we would love to have you here in the house so you can ask questions and get to partake of the after party that never gets recorded. So you're welcome to come and do that if you like. So to introduce our guest this morning is Norma. Please go ahead, Norma.
Uh, Good morning, everyone, and especially to you, Cindy. Good morning, and we are so honored that you're here, uh, even amidst all the love-hate tech stuff that's been going on. We're here, and we are so thankful for you to be here to talk today about the gift of contests. In this quick session, we're going to discuss the benefits of writers entering a contest. What does it do for the writer, and what does it mean? We'll discuss the value of conference contests and the difference in winning one in each venue. In this session, we'll learn how to draw encouragement from these tools because contests are tools that need to be in your toolbox. Finally, we'll discuss in a conference contest if a conference contest wins belongs in a writer's bio. And Cindy, we're so glad that you're going to lead this discussion this morning. And for those of you that don't know, Cindy K. Sproles is an author, speaker, and conference director. She is a freelance editor and writing coach. She directs the Asheville Christian Writers Conference, mouthful, held each February at the Cove, the Billy Graham Training Center in Asheville, North Carolina. Cindy is the co-founder of Christian Devotion Ministries, and we will, excuse me, I've got a tickle. I'll share that link in the chat. She travels nationwide to writers' conferences, teaching writers the craft of writing. Cindy is also a best-selling, award-winning author, and her sixth Appalachian historical novel will be released this June. Cindy is available for speaking and teaching, and you can contact her at cindykSproles@gmail or visit her website. Cindy, welcome, and we are so glad you're here and can't wait to hear what you have for us about contests.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I don't know about you guys, but here in East Tennessee, we're having this thing with allergies going on right now. So forgive me if I'm a little on the horse side off and on. I'm tickled that you ask about this particular class that I teach. Not very many people do because I don't think they realize the importance of contests. And so it sounds kind of silly when you think, oh, I can teach a class on contests. What do you do for a contest? And I think that that's one of the things that we need to break down a little bit is that, why do you enter a contest? Well, a contest to start with. Well, we of course we want to win. That we want to win. We need to win. The other thing is a contest validates our work. It kind of tells us, oh yeah, you did a good job. That's kind of that pat on the back that you need from time to time. And it brings us a little bit of recognition. This sitting in this chair, working day in and day out doesn't always bring very much recognition at all. So there are times when you feel like, does anybody even really care, that I'm doing what I do? So a contest brings you that little bit of recognition. But the big question I think comes as we get on down through that, or, do we put all these contests that we enter in our bio? What's good? As an editor, I see bios all the time. And when I see these bios, a lot of times, especially you can tell if it's a new writer because they've listed every single contest they've ever entered and won. And so even though that's nice, we'll talk a little bit about, when we need to do that. when we need to list our contests that we do. So I want to tell you that if you have questions, then ask, because we can work through and talk through some of these things. But first, let's look at what is the real reason that we enter a contest. Really, I mean, why do we do this? Well, the tool in your toolbox is that a contest should challenge you to step up out of your normal comfort writing zone. I think that's one of the biggest things, especially for new writers, is letting go of their work enough to let somebody else look at their work. It's a little scary. We hold on to it and we think, oh, this is really good. And those people right around us tell us, oh, how good it is. But to actually open up and allow your work to be read by somebody who has a little bit more knowledge than you, it's a little bit scary. I mean, it's our baby. It's our brainchild. It's the one thing we've worked on. So a contest will I think is an important part of our growth as a writer. We need to learn how to present our work and to do it well. A contest will teach us how to take criticism and feedback. And I think the biggest thing is to take away that negative connotation, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But to learn how to take that criticism and that feedback that we get from a contest, especially in conferences, those contests it depends on conference to conference, but a lot of times those conferences will provide feedback for you. And that's really nice. It's helpful, for you because, like I said, this is a tool in your toolbox. So the other thing is, I think that a contest teaches us how to win and how to lose. If you're 50 and below, you were raised in the world of participation awards. And I didn't have that privilege growing up, to get an award because I participated. You either won or you didn't. And I think the heart of that was a good idea, to make our children feel like, well, you made the effort. That was a good thing. But it kind of, I think, went off the rails a little bit because now we have a generation of people who don't understand how to lose. And what value that has in the growth of you personally and in the growth of your writing. So I think it teaches us how to win and how to lose in a world that demands that we win. Contests help us raise the bar. They encourage us to be better at what we do. We can write something and feel like we've done a good job, but then a contest, when we're placed in the midst of other people who are writing, forces us to say, oh, wait a minute, good may not be enough. I probably need to pay a little bit more attention to this and add to it and polish it a little bit more than what we might normally do. So I think it forces us to raise the bar. The other thing is, I think a contest teaches us to be gracious and humble. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but I have friends that it's like, I write Appalachian historical, okay? So my genre is a little small. There's not a whole lot of real writers in the genre that I write. So I've gotten close to those authors. And the nice thing about that is we've learned to cheer for each other. So when I lose, it's like, I really haven't lost because I love this person so much. I'm happy they won too. So it's like a win for me, even though I didn't get the prize. It's still a win for me to be able to share in the joy that they have because we're all in this together. So I think it teaches us to be gracious and humble with our wins and our losses. And I think one of the most important things about a contest is it teaches us how to submit and how to follow guidelines. the two really big problems that we have as writers. I don't know what it is that there's a button in our brain, I think, that shifts to off when we get to the guidelines. And we think, oh, they really don't need that. I'll just skip this one. But in essence, there's a reason why those things are there. And if you miss one, you may knock yourself out of the contest completely because you didn't follow the guidelines. That same thing follows true with when you're submitting to publishers. You know, they have a reason for the guidelines that they have. And if you don't meet the guidelines, then that tells them right off the bat, oh, here's one of the things, this person can't do that. So no. So, you know, it teaches us to learn to follow guidelines and submission rules. So we started talking a little bit about getting out of our comfort zone. When you enter a contest, the one thing I think that pops up in our mind first and foremost is that we open ourselves to the risk of failure. And that's why I said I wanted us to look at that and take the negative connotation out of it. Because when you enter a contest, it's really not about winning or losing. If that's what you're thinking of the whole time, then you need to kind of twist that knob and redo it. Return it so that you're looking at things from a different perspective. Look at it from a learning perspective, not from, oh, can I win this? Because if you don't win, you are going to be let down and disappointed. So you look at it from a more positive aspect. You know, I don't like to say failure because I don't think it is a failure if you don't win a contest. I think it's just a loss. You know, and like I said, we need to learn how to lose when it comes to a contest. It's a loss, but when people say loss, I think automatically they think, oh, they put loss in the category of like I've lost a loved one. No. But it is still a loss. It's something that you've done, you've tried to do, and you didn't do what you wanted to do in it. So hopefully what it does for you is it makes you say, well, I could do this better. I could do this better. So we have to learn how to separate those types of loss and put a real title to what it is that we've done. If we've entered a contest and we don't win, you know, what is the good that comes from that? Because there is good that comes from it. Hopefully there is good that comes from it. The other thing is judging. That word judging also comes along with a negative connotation, and we think, oh no. The very first thing you have to remember when you enter a contest is this is not a personal thing. This has nothing to do with you as a writer or as a personal writer. It has everything to do with the work. And so I think a lot of times, especially new writers, look at a contest and they're afraid to enter a contest because they feel like they're being judged personally. And a judge is picked out to help. They have guidelines to follow, and they judge according to the guidelines that have been given to them. So they don't know you. Most of the time, they don't know you personally at all. So it's not a personal thing at all. If your work does not win, it's not that they just didn't like you. They like you just fine. They don't know you. It's just that the work hasn't met the guidelines or the expectations that they've put on that specific genre or that specific piece of work that it needs to meet in order to be a winner with things. That's why I said that having a contest needs to be in your toolbox, because that's when you start to learn, how do I make this better? How do I improve it? How do I learn the craft better? Because that's what it boils down to. It doesn't boil down to, I just like this piece. You know, I read it and I liked it, but it boils down to, are all the elements there? Is it up to where it needs to be called a winner? So does that make sense?
It does. Cindy, I
Okay.
have a question too, a thought that popped in my head. For those who aren't published yet, entering a contest and not winning can also begin to prepare you for rejection letters. Would you agree with that?
Yes. That's one of the things. But yeah, it does teach us rejection. I think rejection is not a bad thing to me. I think that in the writing world, rejection is a stair step. And because the craft of writing is not something that you just learn overnight, it is something that takes time to learn and to master. And so, for you to be able to accept a rejection and understand that it doesn't mean no forever, it means no for right now. And then you take that no for right now, go back and learn more. Then the next time the no becomes a yes. So yeah, I think rejections are important and vital. I came from an era, because I'm much older, when you actually got a letter in the mail that was a rejection letter. And one of the fun things for me, for a lot of authors my age, was to go to a conference and have authors who were even older than us at the time pull out their file folder and start reading rejection letters. It was a hoot at how some of them were, how some of the letters were worded for our rejection. So, and I still have my first file folder of rejections, where I learned, like, I know that the very first novel that I submitted, well, it wasn't even a full novel, it was 3 chapters, okay? It was, when I was okay, back up. I went to the Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference. That was my first conference in 2002. Alton Gansky was there, and he taught a class that I sat in on, and he said, if you want to learn how to write well, write something you know nothing about. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know anything about fantasy, but my husband at least likes to read fantasy novels. So if I can write something like that and let him read it, maybe I can get some good feedback on it. So I went home and I wrote the first 3 chapters of a fantasy novel. The next year, I took that back to Blue Ridge, and Al ended up being the person who was my paid critiquer. And he read it, he loved it, and he took me, Cindy, come on, let's go. I'm going to introduce you to somebody. He introduced me to 2 agents and to look at. It's like, oh my, I have 2 agents. One of those agents said, well, let's do this. Let's send it to this guy sitting over here, which happened to be a guy named Lynn Goss. And she said, let's send it to him and just see what Lynn has to say. Took months and months and months before I heard anything. Then I finally got a letter, a rejection letter, that said, we really enjoyed this. It was a good story, but it doesn't rival Lord of the Rings. And I had to start laughing and say, are you serious? Of course it doesn't rival Lord of the Rings. I'm not even close to Lord of the Rings, So I think, but I tell you, I kept that rejection letter, and I still look back at it and chuckle, because it's like, well, at least they thought I was like in the ballpark of Lord of the Rings, not good enough, but at least they said, oh, it's kind of similar. So, but it was a good challenge for me to see that the expectation of writing a fantasy novel was far greater than what I had any clue about. So I think rejections are good for us, to have a little bit of stair steps. The first no, and I think you have to understand that publishers have a way of saying no that is not a no forever. It's no, it's not quite ready yet. No, I don't have a place on my shelf for this book right now. No, I've already got 3 other books similar to this book right now. So it's not no on a personal level that they don't like what you've done or anything like that. So, that's, you got me off on a rabbit trail.
Sorry about that. But it was a good rabbit trail.
Connections are important.
Yes. Yes. Good rabbit trail. Thank you.
So we've already talked about how important it is to turn the negative to a positive. So rather than saying criticism, don't look at the things you get back in response from judges in a contest. Don't look at it as criticism. Look at it as feedback. As a writer, you need that feedback to learn how to write better, to learn how to master the craft. So I don't know about everybody else, but for me, I still have paid critiques that I've done through the years that I personally have paid to have somebody else do for me. And I can still flip back through those and say, oh, I'm doing this again, and learn. I still learn from those things. So don't look at those negative, or don't look at feedback as negative criticism. That's not what it is. It's to try to help you. So try to put that perspective on it. And we talked to a little bit about that. It forces us to present our work. If you're going to be a writer and be a serious writer, you have to learn to present your work. A contest is the first and easiest step to do that, because you don't actually have to be face to face with the people you're presenting it to. You work your way up to sitting across the table from somebody in an appointment, from an agent or a publisher, and presenting your proposal to them or your one sheet to them. You need to learn how to do that. And the first way to learn how to do it is to enter a contest, so that you learn how to start to put yourself out there and take the fear out of it. The important thing is, when you sit across the table from those folks at a conference, you find out they're just folks. They're really not some, God above us all here. They're just people just like us. And a lot of times it's great for you to present yourself and just get to know those people. Because later on down the road, those connections will pay off for you in the long run. So a contest helps you learn how to start to present your work. We've already talked about the importance of learning how to win and lose. And I will tell you that I have 2 friends that I have met through the years. One is Sarah Loudon Thomas, and Sarah and I write the same Appalachian historical. The difference in Sarah is that Sarah writes sweet Appalachian historical. Cindy writes the hard, gritty stuff. So when I go into a contest against Sarah, I already know who's going to win because people love sweet over hard, But the thing is, with Sarah, we are such good friends, through the years, that we've become such good friends that we root for each other. So there are times that I do win over her. And I did that year before last, and she was in the audience when I won a Selah. And she and I were in that again. But the thing that was so wonderful for me was when I came down off of that stage, Sarah was standing there with her arms out. It's like, oh, you won. So, learning how to share those things and win, and it shows you that winning is not everything. It's the relationship with this that I've gained so much more from a contest. The other thing is, contests, I think, help us raise the bar. We live in a world right now, and I think most all of us are Christian writers, where our Christian worldview is like falling out of focus. And we need to learn to raise the bar again. And so I think contests puts that bar up there for us, so that we know we need to reach here and then try to exceed that bar with the things that we write. Not just the quality, I mean, that's by far important, but also the content of what we write is so vitally important today. So raising the bar, I think contests charge and challenge us to realize that middle of the road is not the best. We want to be better than middle of the road. We talked a little bit about humility already, that a contest, because there are winners and losers, teaches us humility, how to be gracious, how to be kind, how to still cheer for the other person, when we don't do it. Sometimes we have as much difficulty, I think, accepting praise as we do in accepting a loss. I've had friends who've won things and they never even ever mention that they've won anything. And it's not a matter of bragging about it. It's not like you wave a flag and walk around saying to everybody, oh, I won, I won, I won. But it's learning to be gracious and learning to accept a compliment. And, when you win a contest, that's a compliment. So accept it graciously and admit to it, claim it, so that you have it. Excuse me. Contest teach us to follow those instructions. We talked a little bit about that earlier, how important it is. And submissions. And once you get into and you get a contract, those submissions and deadlines, all that kind of stuff that come along with it, those things are refined within a contest. You learn those things there, and then you understand the importance of it once you land a contract. Because once you land that contract, you are on a deadline. And you're not the only, if you have a traditional book, you're not the only book in the pipeline. So it's learning to understand that your editor's juggling not just your book, but probably 5 others. At the same time, if you miss a deadline, you not only missed the deadline for yourself, but you've messed up the deadline for the other 5 books that they're shuffling around. So that importance of learning to submit correctly and then follow deadlines and instruction. If they send you a note and say, we have 3 weeks for you to, make your edits and send them back, do that. Get them back to them. If not, on time, ahead of time. It behooves you. Here's another rabbit trail. Once you get a contract, if you're able to do those things in advance of a deadline, it really helps. I think it helps you as an author when your next contract comes up, or the hope of the next contract comes up, because a publisher will say, well, gee, Cindy had that done early every time. Early saves them money. And as much as we don't want to admit it, it is still a business. And when we can do things that help save money for them just by meeting a deadline or going ahead of that deadline, it does wonders, I think, when it comes time for you to have the next contract. Hopefully, when they look at that and say, oh, this author's really good, so you want that play well with others kind of thing. So I guess we probably need to move over into conference contests versus national type contests. So I think the first thing to remember is when you enter a contest in a conference, and please don't walk away going, oh no, this is terrible. I'm not being a negative Nanny. I'm really not. But it's important for you to understand that when you win a conference contest, you are winning what is best in that conference. You're not winning what is best in every conference. You're winning what is best in that conference. Which leads me to say, do you need to list every win on your bio? No, because the truth of the matter is, a conference contest win doesn't pull any weight. It doesn't pull any weight. You can put that on your bio and it looks like, oh, she's really great, but it doesn't pull any weight. Once you have a book that's in print, then a contest will pull weight. So a reader will look at a contest in your bio. They'll look at that silver or gold star on the front of your book cover, and it says SALA winner or Illuminations Award winner. They don't know what the awards are. They don't care. They just see a button there that says, oh, this one won a contest. I probably need to read this because it won a contest. They don't have any idea what the contest is or what it means. But in a conference, when you're entering in a conference, it's a whole different kind of recognition for you. It's a personal recognition for you. It's not going to carry any weight out into the market. But once you have a book published, entering those contests does carry weight out into the market when you win, because like I said, little medallion goes on the book and readers pick it up and say, oh, this won something. So it's important for you to understand neither one is greater than the other as far as entering a contest. You need to do it, whether it's a conference contest or a national contest. You need to do it because the practice, that doesn't change. The practice and the importance of continually doing that doesn't change. It continues to help you improve. But there is a difference in how much weight it carries. So it's important for you to keep that in mind, that in a conference, your win is the best in that conference. It's not necessarily the best in every conference, you know. So how do we put that in our bio? Well, if I told you earlier, as an editor, I saw people's their bios get really long because they listed everything they won in every contest that they ever won, which is wonderful to know that they've won contests, but it's just so much easier to be concise and say you're an award-winning author. You are. That is not a lie. You won an award. So put that you're an award-winning author, and you don't have to list every single thing. When you start listing every single contest that you've ever won, you go from looking more professional to looking not unprofessional, but for looking more like you're new, instead of that you have work that has been submitted and done well. So you have to kind of balance that out and look at it. Let's see, what else can I think of on that? Any questions on that, girls? Did that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, we talked about conference versus national. Yeah, I mean, I will say one other thing about those conference wins versus a national win, and it's as far as naming a conference or naming a contest, Illumination Award, the Christie Awards, the SALA Awards. Those are national awards that the average reader doesn't have a clue what they are. You know, nor do they care. Like I said, they don't care, really. I will tell you a funny story. My son came home from for Christmas a couple of years ago from Orlando, and I have all my awards because I do enter contests all the time. And I have my awards listed all over the wall. And he was looking, he said, gee, Mom, I didn't know you'd won so many contests. And I said, oh, he noticed. And he said, yeah. And I said, I'm so glad you noticed that. And I'm so glad it makes you happy that I've won, because when I die, you get all of those. And he went, oh boy. If that doesn't tell you anything other than the person that a contest award means the most to is me. You know, my son is not proud of me. He is proud of me, but he really doesn't care to have all of my awards when I die. So I said, okay, so I release you from having to hold on to these. You may throw them in the trash. Yeah, so it's important, I think, to keep that in mind. Now, the other side of that is I do keep my awards up for me to look at for a couple of reasons. I keep it up there because it reminds me how much hard work I put into those things. I didn't just slap them together. I had years and years and years of work in these. And it's not just a pat on the back from a publisher or from a group of people who like the work. It's, to me, it's a sense of accomplishment. You know, I can look at it and say, wow, I did that from beginning to end, and it paid off. And I think that's one of the things that's important to me. I've been doing this for 25 plus years, you know, and every book that publishes, I enter it in a contest. Do I win them all? No. No, I don't. The books that I think will win are usually not the ones that win. You know, so you never really know what's going to go in. But to enter the contest, to follow the guidelines, to submit the way I'm supposed to submit, and then to take the information that comes back to me and apply that to my next work that I'm working on is valuable. It's more than valuable. So I hope that you see that value in there. One other thing is, for a long time, early on, when self-publishing first came out, yeah, I was around for that. Self-published books were not accepted under most contests. And part of it was a mindset. You know, people didn't look at, or contest people didn't really look at a self-published book as a quality book. And there was issues there. The quality was not as good. The content was not as good. The editing was not there. And so was it really fair to put that book into the mix of a traditional book that has been through all of that stuff and been made the very best it can? Nowadays, we have some amazing self-publishers out there who turn out gorgeous books, who offer and maintain and help an author get the work that they need to have done into the shape that it needs to be in order to produce the best product that they can produce. So now more and more contests are accepting those self-published books into their contests because the quality and the content is so much better than what it used to be. And it doesn't matter, they're going to call themselves self-publishers, vanity publishers, indie publishers. There's small house publishers, I worked for a small house publisher for years. And, but the fact of the matter is those things are now the bar has been raised, and they're bringing in books and producing books that are amazing. And those books are winning contests. So that should tell you something, that when that book enters the contest, the content of that book is good enough. It's to the level of publication that it needs to be at, so that when it hits out in the market, it'll sell. So I think now more and more of those contests are accepting that kind of stuff. So I guess if we recap back and we say, what do you get from a contest? Well, it teaches you, number one, to register, how to register, submit, and follow rules and deadlines. It allows you that participation. So you can revise, you can create, you can perform, you can develop your skills through all of that. It allows you to be judged, to put yourself out there, for your work to be looked at, to be critiqued, to get feedback that's going to help you in the long run. And then hopefully you get rewards and recognition from that, which is that pat on the back. I'll tell you that when my first novel came out, I'd already been writing for a good 15 years. Now, when I went into writing, I was so green. I didn't have a clue. I didn't, well, like I said, I wasn't even in the ballpark of Lord of the Rings, but I knew that. So I didn't walk in to my first conference and expect to pick up an agent. I didn't even go to look at an agent because it's like, I don't even know if I've got stuff that they would even look at. So for me, the steps were a little slower because I needed to learn the process. I wanted to learn the process before I got there. But it took 15 years. No, I take that back. It took 10 years. I was already in the business about 15, but I didn't seriously start to look at publishing for about 5 years because I needed to learn how to write a book, the way that I needed to write one. So by the time 2015 rolled around and I got an agent, okay, on the coattails of a friend that I wrote a romance book with, that the agent turned me down individually, but because I wrote the novel with Aaron, she had no choice but to take me because he was already her client. So I got in as the agent on the coattails of somebody else. I didn't even get in on my own work. But when she started shopping around my first book, which was Mercy's Reign, she went through every publisher I think I could think of, old or traditional and or not traditional, but Christian market and general market. And the last publisher finally came around and said, we really like this, but the publisher said no. So the pub board said yes, but the publisher said, no, I already got a book similar to this. And so I put it back on the table. I went to a conference. I went to Blue Ridge and I was standing there talking to a friend of mine. And I said, I've been doing this for 15 years. This must not be for me. Here's the self-pity thing, I've done it for 7 years, 15 years, and nobody likes what I do. I'm never going to be published. And she looked at me and she said, do you really believe that? And that was a wake-up call for me. Because in my heart of hearts, no, I didn't believe that. I gave myself a pity party, there for a little while. Another friend who I had met at Blue Ridge, my very first year there, her second year at Blue Ridge got picked up and had 3 books through Tyndale. And so she calls me and she said, how's the work going on that first novel that you worked on? I said, well, I've put it away. It got rejected. So I put it away and started another one. And she said, oh, good. Then you're going to be published in the next 3 or 4 months. You just wait and see. And I thought, how would you know that? And she said, well, because you will be published because you come to a point where you trust your work enough to say, done the best I can do. Put it to the side and move on. I've done the best I can do. And you know what? She was right. 3 months later, Kriegel came back and purchased that novel. And I'm still with Kriegel. Who would have thought? And the other thing of that is that book was entered in all kinds of contests and it won contest after contest, but no publisher wanted it. Do you see the difference? There's a big difference there. So the cool thing about that is this is now 2026. That book came out in 2017. and it is still in the top 25 backlist for my publisher, and it's still in almost every ad that goes out email from Books and New. And so you keep it up. You keep entering contests, you keep doing your best to improve the craft, and it'll get there. It'll eventually get there. So, all right, I think that's about all I've got to say, unless you have other questions.
You're muted,
Right.
Norma.
There was a comment. I need to have a thing on my computer muted, unmute something. Anyway, there's been a little bit of conversation going on in the chat about how to know which conferences give or which contests will give you feedback and which don't. Is there a way to specifically search or know that?
No, I don't think that most places, we do a little contest at our conference, but I don't put it on the website, that you get back feedback. Sarah, that I talked about earlier, does my contest, and they she does send them back, the feedback that they get. But no, I don't think most people list that on there. The best thing to do would be to just write and ask.
There are some contests
Some
that
of
will
them
say,
automatically do it, and others don't.
yeah, there are some contests that will say for an extra fee, you can receive feedback. Do you think that's
Yes.
worth doing that or no?
That's a good question.
I think a lot of it would depend on where you're at too as a writer.
Yeah.
If you're really in need of feedback, like professional feedback, then you
Yeah.
might find some value in that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And I guess the source too.
yeah, that's true as well.
Yeah. I've never paid for feedback. Well, I take that back. Yes, I have. But this is me and this is my work ethic. But it's not a contest, but before I ever send anything to my agent, I hire a content editor to go through and read it to make sure, look at it, offer suggestions to make sure that I have my work the very best that it can be before it hits the publisher. That's one of those things where I said, when you go a little extra mile, I think it helps you when you're getting contracts, because they know when they get a book from me, there's not going to be hours and hours and weeks of editing, because I've already done that before it got there. Everybody doesn't do that. So I can't say. For a contest, no, I've never paid for that information. But for my contracts, I do. And I feel like it's well worth my investment to do that. So, yeah. Anything else?
I don't see any questions. Again, lots of comments. We can invite everyone to come back on if there are questions, or you want to post something directly to Cindy. Go ahead, pop on screen and ask away.
Don't be shy. Go
Hi,
ahead, Pam.
Pam. I just now saw you.
Hi. Just kind of, I guess, an observation of, because we talked about in the chat that judging is subjective. Like an editor is going to look at your stuff. It's all subjective because we all come from our own and filters and things. And so when you don't win, sometimes I've entered lots of contests and I read as a judge in several. And I know as a judge, and what I've heard is, can anybody please take one more because we don't have enough? And some contests, they'll take anybody to read. They're desperate because they've got so many entries. And so what happens with that is you have people reading and judging who really don't know how to do it.
Yes.
And so there's that. Keep that in mind, so you're not devastated when you lose, And then there's the contest where sometimes you get notes, and I did this before Fairy Eater was published, in that I entered a contest, got the judges' notes. There were 3 judges. 2 judges scored me really high, gave me good notes. 2 years in a row, the 3rd judge was like, scored me 50 out of 100 instead of in the 90s like the other 2. And both years said, well, I don't really read fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, why are you judging it? They're judging it because the contest needed people. So we need to keep that in mind,
Yes.
that not everybody reading and judging our stuff reads and enjoys our genre.
Right. No, and I'm glad you said that. I'm going to go back and add that in my class because I didn't even think about that. You're right. I mean, I've been subject to that. Subjected, is that the word? I've entered contests before where I have got feedback just like you have on those kind of things. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't even in this like 2 up here and 1 down. Does this person, and it come to find out, the one down here is a comma queen,
Right. Yeah.
it's a comma queen. And so writing is subjective, and contests can be subjective for that very reason. That's why it doesn't change the fact, though, that I feel like you still need to do it. You still need to enter those contests. You still need, because of the practice that it takes for you to present yourself out there. You have to learn when you get critiques back, you take what you can use and you trash the rest of it.
Yep.
You cannot try to make every change every person tells you to make, because writing is suggestive, You suggestive. I'm making up my own words, suggestive. So yeah, you have to be careful and know that when you get that information back. But you know what? I think the average writer, even a new writer can see that difference when they get something back like that. And see, oh, wait a minute, I don't know that this person really, because you are right, especially in the larger things, they need readers. And so they'll pull anybody that will read. And a lot of times too, now I don't know about every conference, but some of them, of the larger conferences that I've read for, still offer me a critique sheet. I don't know if all of them do that, but they try to at least give you, when you're reading this, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And so they try to keep the stuff in context, though I've gotten it back when it wasn't. So
some of them give you rubrics too, because right now I'm reading for the Realm Awards. And of course, in the years ago when I first started, I read, they want readers. They don't want people to read. Just read it as a reader. They're trying to, weed out, because they get thousands and thousands of entries. But now I'm reading all 3 rounds, not the final round, but the first 3. And they've given us, each individual section of world building and characters, and the 1 to 10 and what each number means, and tells us exactly what to look for. And I appreciate that as a judge.
Yeah. Try to keep it consistent. Yeah. But yeah, I have definitely gotten those. The very first time I entered a larger contest, that happened to me. And honestly, it kind of kicked me in the shins, because it's like, I'm learning here, and this is the kind. First of all, the first one didn't even like Appalachian historical. Okay, well, you don't like Appalachian historical, you still read it for the content and the work of it. At a conference in Philadelphia, I got a novel. I lost my train of thought there for a second. Got a novel from a guy that was really a good writer. But in the first page of that novel, he hit me 5 times with the F-bomb. And I called the director and said, I'm not sure I can read this. I can't watch a movie when they keep, yeah. And she said, well, do your best to critique the work. And don't look at, don't be judgmental, critique the work. And then after you do the critique, then, pray that God will give you the right words and how to address that. And so I did that. I went back and I critiqued the work. And it was hard because, that word kept jumping out at me. I will finish this story by telling you that when I had the opportunity to talk to this gentleman, I said, "Can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "How old are you?" And he said, 35. I went, "Okay, that answers one of my questions." You're 35. The other thing is, what is your job? And he was a middle school teacher. And I nearly fell out of my seat. And I said, "Okay, so you're writing YA, and in the first page you're hitting me 5 times with the F-bomb." And he said, "Well, I've been told I have to meet people where they are." Ah, that needs to be explained when we tell that to conferees.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you drop the bar at all. It means that you raise the bar, if anything else, and meeting them where they are is setting a better example from where they are, to want to what they want to be. But, I was just a side rabbit trail, still. It is subjective and you're going to get that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of conferences do try to give you the little sheet, especially in the later rounds. They want to give those sheets so that consistency is there.
Before
I
we
have a
wrap up,
question.
go ahead.
My question is, in the range of contests you've entered, have you seen where they have told people what they were going to be judging on? Because I've run into several contests where you don't really know what the standards are you're being judged on.
Never in a contest have I been given that privy information. I've never been privy to that.
I mean, it kind of seems like
Yeah.
people should at least be given a guideline of sorts, but no, it's never there. So it's always like a shot in the dark at, what
Well,
am I aiming for with my
I think if
work?
we start telling people in advance, these are the things we're going to be, judging you on, then they're not going to write their best as far as their storyline and that kind of stuff. They're going to be looking at things that we don't want them to look at. We want to look overall at the content of this, So I think I don't know, Pam, have you ever had anybody in a contest you've entered? No. I think it keeps it as
Yeah, I was going to say,
as it
Patricia's. Sorry, I was going to say Patricia's putting that in the chat. We do that for ACFW Kidlit for the children's book. There's a lot of beginner writers, so we do give them a rubric for the kinds of things that we're looking for, because most of them are true beginner writers.
right.
And I've seen a few contests where they give that out. They'll tell you how you're going to be scored ahead of time and give that out. Not too many, though.
I've never experienced that. So
No, the
I've
rubric
seen a
I was
couple, but
talking
just
about
a
was for
couple.
the judges. So,
yeah.
but I've read for Kidlit, ACFW Kidlit, and I appreciate, because we as a judge have stuff to follow there too.
Right.
And I appreciate that.
I know that Sarah gives the conferee, or not the conferees, but the judges. Sarah gives our judges a guide sheet to go by. I know that with the sailors, they get a guide sheet to go by. What do you have this, what this, and so I think a lot of the larger conferences try to level the ground as much as they can so that everybody has a fair shot at it. But yeah, it's learning to follow those guidelines.
And Cindy, do you think if writers, especially newer authors, were given what they're looking for, do you think they would write to the contest rubrics instead of writing their style?
I do. Yes, I do. And which to me destroys their voice, destroys, their story, their content, because now they're trying to, I want to win this prize. They haven't, content, and this, I think I said this, but I think contests have this level of, we have to learn, what's expected of us in a toolbox. How do we write the very best that we can write, the crap. learn the craft, learn to tell a story. These are the things that your story is being, your work is being judged on, and not, oh, we want you to write this direction. I mean, you might as well say this is like for a compilation. If you do that, got a compilation that I want you to write this, and this on. So yeah, I think newer writers especially would try to, because they haven't come to a point where they see the importance of what a contest can do for them. It's like, oh, I just need to try to win this. I can win it, and everybody's going to go, yay, at home. They're going to be so proud of me. But they don't realize the value that happens for them.
Right. Any last comments before we wrap up for today? All right.
I was going to say, one of the things that occurred to me while let me go back, while Virginia was speaking, is that I think what I'm going to keep in mind next time I'm submitting a manuscript is I'm going to be thinking through whether or not my manuscript is good enough to be submitted to a contest, because you have a different expectation on your manuscript and you try a little bit harder when you're submitting it to a contest, and you don't always have that mindset when you're submitting it to an editor or to an agent, right?
Yeah. And the mindset should be the same all the time, that you put out the very best work that you can put out.
Right. I mean, I said Virginia. Sorry, Cindy. I was thinking something else. But yeah, I mean, the way that you had worded that, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't think that when I submit to an editor or an agent. But if I think that before I submit, I'm going to be asking myself a bunch of different questions. And I'm going to be looking at my manuscript a little bit differently, with a little bit stronger, editing sense.
Right. Yeah, I think so. The hard thing for me that has been for self-published versus traditional publishing is that there has been in the past that drop off of, oh, I don't think it's important. My work is good already. I've got this tool, I can publish it. Now we have self-publishers who have people on staff who can help bring those things. I'm working with a lady right now, coaching a lady, and she said, I just wrote the stuff down and I gave it to them and said, fix it. And then she said, but I want to do it different this time. I want to learn how to do it. And then a couple of days later, she goes, this is hard. Well, yeah, it's hard. It's a craft. You don't just write words down on the page and think that everybody can understand those things. So, there is value to doing the very best work that you can do regardless. God calls us as Christians. We're all in that boat right there. He calls us to write. That's why we're doing what we do. And so when he calls us to write, he calls us to do our best. And we owe him our best. And our best is not fast and hurry and get it done just because. I love it when I have people who sit down across the table from me at a conference and say, God told me to get this done now. I don't ever doubt that God tells you to do something. I never doubt that. I never doubt that. But I do think that God wants us to do the very best work that we can do. And that means looking at it with eyes that say, how can I make it the very best that it gives glory to God? Not just, oh, I've got to get this done, kind of thing. So, yeah, I agree with that. Do your very best all the way through from beginning to end.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Cindy. This has been so encouraging. And even though I decided last minute to go to Blue Ridge and got in just under the wire to enter the contest, I'm sure I won't win because I spent so much time fixing one that the other two that I submitted, I didn't get quite as much time to, but it's all about the journey and just putting yourself out there. And we just have to be obedient and leave the results to God. And I think that came through loud and clear with your message
Yeah, keeping your mind
today.
on keeping your mind focused on what needs to be done, and knowing that these things like contests are kind of the gravy on the biscuit, you know.
Right.
And your contest fee often goes to scholarships. So there you go.
Yes,
That too.
yes,
That too.
it
Absolutely.
does.
Well, thank you so much, Cindy. We hope you'll stick around for the after party with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Brandy and let her close us out for today.
Well, actually, I was going to ask Melissa first, what's up next week?
Oh, well, we have our guest with us. Is actually going to be speaking next week. Patricia Tiffany Morris is going to be kind of adding a little more to this conversation. She's going to talk about the practical end of submissions to contests and how you can find them and organize them and all. And Patricia, is there anything you'd like to kind of add to that or say about that process?
And I've got a couple resources I want to give you. One is a spreadsheet that you can customize and make your own and delete the contests you don't like. They have clickable links so you can go right to the page. And then I have a subscription to a calendar that is an all-day calendar that has a lot of those contests that you can turn off and on to look to see what's coming up.
Oh wow,
Awesome.
Sounds
I
like
need
fun.
that.
Yeah, so
Pretty
lots of
good.
good practical hands-on stuff that I think will be really helpful for those who are interested in submitting to
Now I'm
contests.
bummed I'm not going to be able to be here next week.
And I
Well,
will
it's a
be
good
here.
thing. I guess it's a very good thing we're going to have replays then, huh?
Yes, yes. Replays, YouTube, Writers Chat channel. That's where you're probably
Yes.
watching this if you weren't here today. But if you do want to be here, it live Tuesdays. We're here most Tuesdays, 11 o'clock Eastern time. I'll let you calculate from where you are. The way to do that is join Writers Chat members Facebook group. There we post our events and you'll find out all of the goods for how to get in here and be here with our guests and ask the questions you want to ask. So we would love to have you join us. And until next time, which next Tuesday, thanks for watching. We hope this has been helpful. See you next week.
I know.